of, like in California, if the Christians that are in California, there's more Christians in California than there is any place else, but you never see that politically because they don't vote, because they've been so steeped in a kind of a hideout in the basement mentality that they don't want to get involved with they still don't want to get involved with secular government. They're waiting for the Antichrist and the rapture. I mean, I'm telling you, this is actually where our people are at. And so we don't look at the fact that Jesus said, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." For some reason, there's a whole virus in the brains of Christianity that says, well, it's not going to get any better down here. We're going to have to wait to get raptured out and go. But Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is supposed to be manifest on the earth, and where you have it manifest, you're going to have a resiliency against organized evil, which is why the United States is such a powerful nation when it's not taken over by atheists, which is why freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the right to assemble happens here, but you're seeing it attacked because Christianity creates kingdom principles that God gave for the maximum happiness and prosperity of nations. It's not like there is no playbook for nations. The greatest success in terms of medicine, in terms of education, in terms of every field of human endeavor has come out of Western civilization built on a Judeo-Christian foundation. That used to be the foundation of science, and is only of late surrendered itself to become the science of politics, which is where they're funded to give opinions, and they give the opinion that the politician wants them to give. So Christianity is the foundation of the prosperity of Western civilization. And so when you take that foundation away, and you don't say that God and the Word of God and the ideas of God and the wisdom of God is relevant to family, relevant to economics, relevant to education, relevant to government, if you back up from that, you create an artificial world which has a void, meaning artificial in the sense that God is irrelevant, the Word of God doesn't work, and so that there's no practical application of biblical thinking to actual earth. We built Western civilization on the assumption of those ideas work. The whole Constitution, if you read it, is written about self-evident truths and involves the Creator and those truths. That shaped the thinking of those people in the 1700s. Now you remove that, Mercedes, completely from America, and it creates a void where a counterfeit theology and a counterfeit kingdom on earth starts to show up. So what you're going to see then is a fake utopia, which becomes a Marxist paradise, which actually, ironically, sets up what was predicted to be an antichrist system in the earth, created to some degree by the void of Christians that do not do what Jesus said, occupy till I come. So there are nations in the earth that are resisting. They're resisting this empire assimilation. They're resisting it. This is why Viktor Orban is so hated in Europe, because Viktor Orban said Judeo-Christianity is the foundation of Hungary. This is our culture. Family is important. We are not going to promote same-sex marriage. We're not going to promote abortion. We're going to promote healthy families, and we're going to put money into the arts. We don't want arts being decadent, pornographic, and destructive. We want arts lifting up mankind. So they put money, higher GDP into arts than any other nation.
Wow.
As a result, they're creating a culture that is thriving, an economy that is strong, and they don't just indiscriminately bring people in from every other nation. They have walls around their country. They refuse to bring Muslim immigration in. They're not anti-Muslim. They don't want to bring people into the culture as a multicultural that wars against their own culture. And so for that reason, Viktor Orban is despised. That and the fact that he kicked George Soros out of Hungary, and he says he won't let Soros in. That's why the left is visceral on him. But I'm trying to tell you, Poland and other Slovakian nations fall into this category. They're resisting the decadence of the West. By the way, weirdly enough, China and Russia have both come to the conclusion, and we aren't even talking about this in America because we look at them like they're adversarial nations. The reality is they have observed the destruction of America and its civilizational decline, and they are actually stronger than ever moving against the woke agenda that that was all part of the democracy trend, and they are now cracking down on it in China.
Wow.
And they're saying, after studying America, we don't want to go down that road.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting conclusion.
Definitely. And you say that. I mean, I've heard you talk about that before that. And honestly, I hate to keep calling out the book, but it's such a great book. It's very like predictive, prophetic. But you talk about that and you say that, it's really, America becomes in some ways a cautionary tale, depending on how that election went. But you said, because you were just in Brazil recently, and America is becoming a cautionary tale to these other quote unquote sheep nations. Like you're talking about Hungary and Poland and Brazil. These are these other sheep nations. What were created, all nations are designed to exemplify the glory of God in some way, in some component. We all have our own gifts. And you talk about that with America, that we're evangelistic in nature. And whether we are exporting Christ or exporting holiness or righteousness or goodness, you're exporting something. And right now we're not exporting that. We're exporting, like you're talking about, like these really woke, progressive ideals around the globe. And it's become a cautionary tale. Anyways, I'm just preaching to the choir right now.
But I think it's important to say, Dave Barton said something last night, and he said it on this broadcast was on. It was him and Glenn Beck, and these guys were talking about they're getting people out of Afghanistan, Christians out, and how the number one adversary they had to deal with was the American State Department. Now, this I hate to say this because it's just another fact that distresses. The State Department has one of the lowest percentages of Christians because of the HR department's hiring processes. If you're a Christian or conservative, they don't want you in the state. The State Department is even independent of Biden. The State Department is a bureaucratic entity that is actually made up of lifelong employees who aren't elected, and they survive presidents. The State Department was the greatest enemy to getting the innocent and vulnerable people out of Afghanistan. They actually were working against Americans that were putting like $40 million into getting Christians and people on the terror watch list, that America was giving information to the Taliban, and these people were getting kept from leaving or getting bumped off in the country. State Department became an enemy. We discovered the State Department actually has been invaded by Marxists and LGBTQ activists. The progressive Marxists and the radical woke is so strongly embedded in the State Department that it explains why the rainbow flag has to fly with our national flag over embassies around the world, because our new religion that America is exporting is transgender queer alliances. Now, catch how weird this is. I know to you it sounds so incendiary and bizarre. This is now what flies with our flag. Is it any wonder that when we put that on our embassy and we begin to endorse, imagine if we were endorsing a Christian flag underneath the American flag, you'd have people freaking out in the United States. But we are endorsing a religion, but it's the woke flag. Hey, if you haven't seen me around as much on the platform recently, it's because all the explosive, incendiary things that I want to say, the Lance Rants, are on the podcast. Go to lancewalnut.com/podcast and hear the unbridled utterance